Hello and welcome to today's European SharePoint Office 365 and Azure Community webinar. My name is Shane and I'm delighted to be joined by Ryan Schoten, MVP Senior Systems Engineer at Blizzard Entertainment, who will be talking to you today about how to combine the strengths of Forms, PowerApps and Teams through Flow. Remember to join in the conversation about today's webinar on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @EuropeanSP and our hashtag is ESPC19. Don't forget to check out the Resource Center. This is packed with the latest blogs, ebooks, webinars, and how-to videos. Simply visit SharePointEurope.com and click the content link. Join us at ESPC 19. Call for speakers is now open at SharePointEurope.com. This is your chance to help drive the profession forward. Build your own profile and contribute to the community's success by sharing your experience and insights with your peers. After the webinar, we will have a questions and answers session. Type any questions you have for Ryan in the questions window. Some questions will be selected and answered at the end of the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and added to the Resource Center, where you will be notified by email when it is available. And now I'm going to pass you over to our webinar presenter, Ryan Schoten. Hello, Ryan.
Hello, thank you, Shane. Welcome, everybody. As we talk today, we talk about how we can combine the different tools in the Office 365 suite. Namely, at this point in time, we're going to talk about Forms, PowerApps, and Teams by using Flow. A little bit about me. My name is Ryan Schouten. I've been working with SharePoint for over 12 years now. As I tell people, it's one of those things that the company I was at the time, they said, hey, we're doing SharePoint. Go figure it out. And as I've talked to a lot of people across the community, it gets a common thread about most people is that it's kind of one of those things that falls on their lap. But it's one of those things I've loved working with, and I really enjoy what I do, so I've kind of stuck with it for a few years. Also, I'm a Microsoft Office MVP, Office Apps and Services, and I've been a developer for quite a few years. So a lot of these low-code, no-code solutions really resonate with me because it now frees me up to be able to do other things. And so I spend my time going out and training people how to use these tools. So I'm hoping today that you'll all learn something new and that we can advance the discussion together. So we're going to start out talking about forms. There are a lot of different things that people talk about. We have a lot of different sessions if you've been involved in the community at all with PowerApps and Teams. They're all over the place. But I figured as part of this section, let's cover some of the less known areas and how we can tie them all together. So starting out, we're going to talk about forms. If you haven't worked with Microsoft Forms, they're really powerful tools that allow you to be able to create in minutes a survey, a quiz, a poll, a way of gathering information from people that used to take you a long time to get done. Also, these are available that you can send to anyone. By default, they're limited to just users in your organization, but they can also be shared anonymously to people that are outside your organization. Also, you can get real-time results. So as people are filling out and responding to your forms or quiz, you can see through the charts that are integrated with the tool the updates as they're coming in. You don't have to sit there and refresh, like, okay, did we get a new number? It just updates automatically. And there are different ways that you can get notifications yourself to be able to carry on. Also, like we said, you can do a lot of different things with it. It is also designed that it will work well on mobile devices out of the box. Per Microsoft's mantra of mobile first, cloud first, and the way they keep focusing on mobile devices, no longer a afterthought, it's more of the first thought. And then every other experience they add upon it. Also, we get, like I said, the analytics, the reporting, and we get the ability to take the data and export it to Excel if we want to. But today, we're also going to talk about how we can send the data to other places to be able to get some more power and get some more use out of it. So let's go ahead and take a look. We're going to start out by creating our first form. So to do that, It's just as easy as going to office.com in your Office 365 tenant. And then we can click here from the apps. We can click on forms. If it doesn't show up for you, it is just as easy to click on explore all apps. And then forms is here as well. And then it's also available in the app launcher if you need to get into it. So once we click on that, it'll load up all of the other forms that we've created and things that we've worked on. So we do have the option that we have our own personal forms, plus they also have group forms, which are forms that are allowed and tied to an Office 365 group. So that way, all members of the group can edit the form and can see the responses that have been on it, which really works nice when you're trying to work with a team to gather in some information. For today's purposes, we're just going to be creating a fairly basic form, so I'm just going to create one on my own. So I click on New Form, we get the form designer. So I can come in here and I can start typing things out. So we can say SPC webinar RSVP. Okay, so what we're going to be creating today, we're going to be creating a fairly simple tool for being able to RSVP, for example. Even though I know you guys have already RSVP'd, you're attending the webinar today, we're just going to use that as a sample web case so that we can see how we can make this work. So as part of this, we can stick with the basics here. I can also select an image that I want to go with it. So I'm going to go out and search. Let's see what we've got for ESPC. Nope. European SharePoint. We'll spell it out. Okay, we have a bunch of different content. And let's just go with something basic then. Okay, we'll select this guy. And then we'll hit add. So you can see we now have the ability to put the image here. We can put in some instructions for our users. So you can say, please this event. And now we can start building in the form and gathering the information we want from users. So for this one, since we're doing an RSVP, I want first name for sure and email address, for example. So once we have those, okay, yep, those are the ones I want. Let's add selected. Then also I'm going to add in a question that's going to be a choice, and I'm going to say favorite. Let's see, we'll go this way. Favorite feature. Okay, so we can say PowerApps forms groups. Point. Anyway, we can create a bunch of different options. For this particular one, I want to make sure this guy is required, and I'm going to allow multiple selections. So that way, because I know a lot of us are concerned, we have a lot of different features that we like as part of Office 365, so I'm going to allow it. Let's just double check here. We need to make sure these guys are also required. There we go. So now we have our form ready. I want to just snazz it up a little bit here. So I can come in and I can select the theme. So I can go out and search for an image. I'm not going to go with a SharePoint image this time frame. I'm going to go, since most of the people probably attending are living in the cold north where they're dealing with some snow, so I'm just going to look for an image of a blizzard. So let's see. Since most people are digging out right now, we'll go with that guy. So you can see it sets the image in our background. Also, we can pick a color scheme if we want to set a specific color. So I can say hash. Oops, get rid of the extra part there. Okay. Cool, we have no background, we have a little more color to it. Now we can also come in and preview and see what this form would look like. So if we click on the preview option, this is what it would look like if we sent somebody the URL directly to our form. Also, we can click on mobile, and this is what it would look like if somebody opened it up on their phone. So we have a bunch of different ways we can kind of proof and test it out. So if we come back here, I'm just going to go ahead and fill out my information. And I'm going to select, let's do form, PowerApps, flow. Cool. Now when ready, I hit submit. Cool. So now if we go back, We can go see in our responses, we now it says a 1, so we have 1 response to it. And we can come in here and we can see here's my information. And since I selected the 3, it automatically updated with those 3 responses that I selected. As part of this, Forms is also keeping track of the start and end time. So say, for example, you want to promise to users, okay, this form takes 2 minutes to respond to the survey. It'll take no more than 2 minutes of your time. You can actually validate to see how long it takes people to fill it out, just as informational purposes. So for example, if we go into view results, you can see it took me 32 seconds to complete. Also, when we're done, I can open this up in Excel and deal with the information. Now, one of the things we wanted to deal with as well is at this point in time, this form is only available to people in my tenant. So for example, that means it'll be available to me. Not super helpful since it's a very small tenant. I want to get more people to register. So I can come into here. If I click on settings, we do have branching information. If you want to control, okay, if they answer the question this way, we want to ask this question next. But what we need is we're going to go under settings. So in settings, if I want to allow anybody, I just check this option here, and then I can send the form to anybody in the world and they can fill it out. No sign-in required, so it's truly anonymous. The other option we have here is that only people in my organization and to record their name. So if I leave this checked, it'll give them a message saying, hey, when you fill out this form, the people will be able to see your name and email address. If you don't want that, you want to have it be anonymous inside your organization, you can just uncheck that. Also, you can say only allow 1 response per person. The cool thing we can do as well is we can also control when people can respond. So right now, the accept responses is open, so anybody can respond to it. I can also say, you know what, I only want this form to be open during a certain date range. So I can say, okay, from today through, well, let's go through tomorrow. At that point in time, I want people to be able to respond to it. Also, I can customize the thank you message. So instead of just these canned responses, your response was submitted. Thank you for registering for our webinar. We'll send you a confirmation shortly. There we go. Okay. Also, we can get an email notification every time somebody responds. It responds if we want. Also, if you are doing it inside your organization and you record their name, so we'll turn this guy back on, we get this option that says to send an email receipt to respondents, which gives them a confirmation email that they did fill out the form, plus a link to be able to go view the responses they entered. I'm hoping this is Microsoft leading up to the ability to allow us to edit responses that we submitted previously, but at that point in time, we don't have that ability. Once we've gone through, we've got everything configured, we're good to go. We can now click on share and share our form out. Now, we have the default option, we can just grab a link. We also do have the ability to grab a QR code so that way people can respond to it. And then we have a few different options. We do also have the ability to share the form as a template so others can start from that, or we can also get a link that we can send to people so they can get permissions to work on that form if they're not part of our group, or if we did just a basic form, so we can get other people to be able to come in and work with it as well. So if we want to see what that experience looks like, if I just copy, I said to only allow 1 response. All right, we can try that again. And again, turn out too many options. There we go. So you see we have all sorts of stuff going on here. I can fill it out again, but we've already seen how that behavior works. All right, so at this point in time, we're going to move on to the next part of this, our demonstration. So Microsoft has what they call their business application platform, which includes Power BI, PowerApps, and Flow. And Microsoft has produced several white papers even on how to create different applications and to work through different things. Today, we're going to talk about PowerApps and Flow and how we can take advantage of those pieces of functionality. So PowerApps, as I'm sure if you haven't seen these, it's a really cool tool that allows you to be able to work and create applications fairly easy. And it's also, yet again, like forms, designed to work well on mobile and on web devices. And you can create them without code, even as so as Microsoft says. But in reality, if you really want to make the really cool Power Apps, you're going to need some sort of expressions, as they call it, which really is just code. So I call this more of a low-code solution and not a full no-code. But you can do quite a bit without having to deal with that too much. Okay. The other cool thing is, since this is designed for mobile, it can take advantage of the different sensors that are on the device. So when you're creating an app, you can get their GPS location, you can use the microphone, you can use the camera, all of this without actually having to write a bunch of different code, and it just works. Also, the cool part about these is that you can instantly push these out to a device. As a developer trying to work with the different platforms, whether you're working with Apple or you're working with Google, it's not always the easiest to try and get apps released, especially in an enterprise space. But with PowerApps, you don't have to worry about it. Microsoft has already gone through the headaches of working with them and released the PowerApps app, which is how your users will go in and consume these devices on mobile. Also, your Power App can be added to their home screen, for example, as an icon, just as if it was any other app. So it makes it really easy to get that seamless integration without all the extra headaches that we have to deal with. So now let's go take a look, and we're going to step back just a little bit. So right now we have our form, it's gathering data for us, but at this point in time, the data is only on its own. It's stored inside there. So as we work on this, scrolled a little too far. So as we work on this, we need a way to be able to get the information from forms into something that we can use more. So to do that, we're going to create a space where we can put this in. So I'm going to switch back to here, and I'm going to go in, and I happen to have where's my SharePoint? I happen to have a site created that I can use for this purpose. So I'm going to go into my SharePoint Saturday demo site, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to add in a new list. So we'll call this ESPC webinar RSVP. So since everything in SharePoint has to have a title, we'll leave that guy alone and we'll put first name in there. What I'll add in now is I'll also add in a column for single line of text for email. Okay. I'll also add in another column for favorite feature. And then just to manage it, since we're actually doing a RSVP system, I'm going to put in a choice field for status. So I'm going to start out, everybody's going to be registered, checked in. And then also throw in attended, just in case you want to keep track of that. Or, let's see, online. We also can come in and set a default value, but most of this information is going to be coming through a different channel than normal, so I'm not super concerned. So we'll go ahead and hit save, and we have our list ready. So because I know we're going to be doing this, instead of having the users to come into a SharePoint site to be able to come in and edit everything, I want to create a Power App that will allow them to very easily come in, update a person, and work with it. So from here, I'm going to click on Power Apps, and I'm going to tell it to create an app. And we'll call this ESPC webinar. Okay, then I click create. Now this is going to go in the background to kind of see it working through some things. It's going to set up my Power App, and it'll create the different screens for us. And by default, it's going to create 3 screens. It will have a gallery screen, a detail screen, and an edit screen. So the gallery kind of gives us your list view. The details allows them to see the information. Then they have the edit screen, which is where they get sent if they want to add in a new item, or if they want to be able to So edit an existing one. So you can see on the left in the background over here, it's setting things up. We have our screens, it's saving our app. All right, and we're off and running. So as we can see here, this is our what they call the browse screen, which has a gallery control, which shows all the items that we have access to in the list. So it kind of, since there's nothing in the list, it gives us an empty placeholder, which is where we can see the different controls that we have in place. So we can see our top one will be the title, which for us is going to be their first name. And then we have email, the address, and then it also has a box for their favorite features. So for the most part, I'm okay with that. We don't need to do too much there. What we really care about is we can come into the edit screen. So if anybody that's not worked with these before, we have a lot of cool things we can do, but as you can see, we have some changes we need to make. For us, the name of our first field, even though it is title, that's not what we called it on the form. So I want to change that. To do that, I can just come into Advanced, click on Unlock, and now I can change the display name. So instead we'll call this first name, which is what we wanted. Then I can also come down and attachment. Since as part of this, I am not expecting my people at the event to be able to take pictures of you and add it to the event to your registration, so we don't necessarily need this. So we have a couple different options we can do for hiding it. First off, we can just come in, click Unlock, and then we go into our design options, click More, and we have an option for visible true. If we set that to false, it's gone. The other option we do have is if I click on the edit form, with our properties, if I click edit fields, I can take attachments and remove it. Either approach works. The setting it visible to false works really nice if you have kind of like a branching type scenario you want to do in your application, so you can do the true false dynamically. But this way, we're pretty much ready to go. So our form, our webinar registration form is ready. So let's go ahead and just show that experience so we can get an item in there. So I'm going to add in a new. So this is kind of be the scenario if somebody is a walk-in registration, if you have an in-person event. So I put my name in. Feature, we'll call it PowerApps. Now we'll notice when we get connecting this with Flow, the format comes in a little differently, but I'm just going to keep it this way for now since it's manual entry. And then we can set the status to checked in, and we're off running. Okay, so we can see we now have our first item in the list. So our Power App is ready for our people to start working with. Other than I do, in this scenario, since I want to make this fast, I do want to make one slight modification. So instead of the arrow here taking them to the detail screen, I'm going to completely bypass it, and I'm going to send them someplace else. So right now, if I go to advanced, we see that it's navigating them to detail screen. I'm going to say, you know what? I don't want detail screen. I want edit screen. Ooh. All of it. Edit screen 1. Cool. So now if we check this out, instead of going to details, this is going to take us straight to edit, so that way people can come in and they can check them in and carry on. Nice and simple. All right, so now we got the problem is we need to get our information from forms into our SharePoint list. So now we can talk about how we're going to accomplish that. And the way to do that is we're going to use Flow, which Flow allows us to be able to do and connect these different tools in a really awesome way. In reality, a flow is nothing more than a trigger and the actions you want to have happen when that trigger is fired. So for example, if we have, in our case, when we get somebody responding to our form, we want them to be able to, we want that action to be able to pick it up so we can work with that data that we're getting with. So we'll have a trigger that is a form response, and then we'll have actions on what we want to do with that data. The beauty of it is Microsoft gives us a lot of templates for getting started. I, a lot of times, will find a template that will get me close to what I'm looking at, start with that, and then come back in and make my modifications. Now, the beauty is there actually is a template that does exactly what we need it to do for our scenario today. At least get us close, and then, like I said, we'll make some adjustments when we get there. So let's go ahead and create our first flow. So if we switch back to our tenant here, I can go back to office.com again, and if we go back, this is one of those ones we do have a nice, all right, mouse is freaking out. We do have a nice big button here for flow. And then again, we can, if you can't find it, there is also the option down here under Explore Your Apps. So if I click on Flow, this will now show all of the flows that I currently have created. So in this case, I'm going to create a new one, but I'm going to create it from a template. So we can see there are a ton of templates, and there are just over 280 connectors, I believe, that we can work with, and then each one of those could have several different templates associated with it. So for us, I'm just going to go the easy route, and I'm going to search. So I can say forms, hit enter. And for what we need, the first option is what we want. Record form responses in SharePoint. Cool. So I can select that guy. It's going to show you, here's your trigger, here are the actions involved, and here are your connections. So which accounts it's going to use to be able to interact with the different systems. So if I'm good with that, I can go ahead and click continue. And now we're ready to go. Other than with that template, we need to provide some information. So the first thing we need is we need the form ID that fires when we want to trigger when we get a response. So it asks for form ID, but it does also give us a nice drop down of the forms we've been working on previously. One caveat I do have to add is this will only pick up your personal forms. If you create a group form, it will not show up in the dropdown. So to get that scenario, you can just select enter a custom value. Then if you come back to your form, in the URL, you'll see a nice little option that says form ID equals this really long, ugly string. Okay, if we now copy that value, I can paste it in and I'm good to go. Or since this is just a personal form, I can just select it. Now, the template is smart enough to know that forms, when we get a response, there could be more than one response that comes in at the same point in time, which is why the template gives us an apply to each. And it says, okay, for all the responses that we got, we'll process and run these actions. So for example, we need to select the form again, because this is going to go out and pull the data out of the form based off of the response. And now we need to give it the connection to SharePoint. So in here, I'm going to go ahead and select my SharePoint site. So we have our demos. Cool. Yet again, you can select custom value and paste in a URL of your site if it doesn't show up in that recent list for whatever reason. And now this has gone off and it's loaded in all the lists in that site. So I say, okay, cool. So we have our ESPC webinar SVP, and now it's going to go pull all the fields that we have. So we have what we saw before. So we have title, email, favorite feature, and status value. So if I come into title, on the right, we can now see we have all the questions that we asked in our form. So I say, okay, yeah, we were using first name to go into title. If I click on email address, we have email address. Favorite feature, we'll select favorite feature, and status, we didn't ask for that from the users, but I'm going to go ahead and set a default value here of registered. Now, if it was something they were asking, we can also select enter custom value, which allows us to pick from the responses that we got or from a previous action in our flow. So if I'm just going to cancel back, and we're just going to default it to registered. So now at this point, I can go ahead and save that. Cool. But one thing I do also tell people is if you're working with these on a regular basis, it's a good idea to come in and rename your flows so that the name actually means something to you. At this point in time, record form responses in SharePoint. If I did 20 forms, I'm going to have record form responses with no number through 19. So we're like, I want to change that up. So this is ESPC webinar process response, for example. Cool. I hit save, and it's ready to go. So now if I come and respond to our form, put my name in again. SharePoint this time. Cool, and then we'll hit submit. Okay, we can see we have our nicer message here. And then if we go into our SharePoint list, get back to our all items view, and we can now see we have the 2 items. So I had PowerApps and SharePoint, and with a default status of registered. So that part's ready. And we can also, that means if we refresh on our Power App, we now have our second item. And you can see the difference in format. When the information's coming from Flow, from Forms, it's giving us the information in a JSON style encoding of the responses. So this is a JavaScript array notation. So we have our 2 responses, and you can massage that through Flow if you would like. So for example, now I'm here, I want to register myself. Okay, instead of registered, I'm going to say, yep, nope, now he's checked in. Done. Okay. Now, one of the cool things we can do is we can do a lot of different other actions in association with this as well. So a lot of times we get requests like, hey, yeah, cool. It's cool that we can do these, have people RSVP for these, but how do we get some more value out of that? So let's add some things to our flow. One of the things I get asked a lot is people like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could actually send a confirmation email to somebody with an ICS file, for example, they can now add the event to their calendar. So let's go ahead and do that. So once we've added the item to SharePoint, I'm going to click on Add an Action. And in this case, since I know I'm going to be sending something, the action is going to come from Outlook. So if I select Outlook, we now have an option here to send an email. So I can specify who I want to send it to. So in our case, we already know, since we've asked the user for their email address. So we can see, if we scroll over to the right, I know we've got it, but none of these looks quite right. So what we can see, though, is based off of the previous actions, I know we've got the get response details should have the data we're looking for. So if it doesn't show anything and you just see, hey, we can't find the inputs that match, what we know is, like, okay, just click on See More, and now it pulls them all up. So it's kind of a little trick that sometimes they're trying to be helpful, but at the point of sometimes hiding more than it should. So for our case, I'm going to select email address, and I'm going to say thank you for registering. One second here. Okay. For our webinar, here is the information you entered. So now we can also give them a summary of what they responded with. So I can come over to the side here, and I want their first name, email. We pretty much will give it back to them just to make sure, and then we can say their favorite feature. So you can also provide them instructions. Say, please open the attached ICS file and click save to add it to your calendar. So I don't see any options to be able to do much more of what we're looking for with this email. So that's how I know. Let's go advanced options and see what we've got. So what we can do is we can send this from a different email address, for example. Say we have a different alias on our account, or your account has been granted permission to send on behalf of, or send as a different email address. So we can put that in there. In this case, I'm okay with it coming from me. But we do have this option here for attachments. So I'm going to say espc webinar.ics. Now we need the actual content of the ICS file. I don't know about most people, but I don't have the format for an ICS file memorized. Luckily, there's some easy ways we can do that. So to do that, if we switch over to Outlook, and I say I want to create, oops, not a new message. I want to create a new appointment. There we go. We can now say ESPC, typing, webinar. And this is going to be, since we know we started about a half hour ago, so we know this will go from 6 to 7 for my time. And then we'll say, okay, yep, that date's correct. On our appointment, we can come in and say, you know what, we want a reminder. Cool. So we can come in and add in some information now that they'll give some information to the user. So we can include links to be able to get into the webinar. We can also just say on combining the strengths of forms, PowerApps, and Teams with Flow. All right. So now the cool part is, now that we have this appointment, we don't necessarily have to do anything with it, other than we can come into File and click Save As. And the default option it's going to give it to us in is an ICS format. And it picks up the file name based off of the title of our event. So that makes it nice and easy. So I can now hit Save. And we're good. And then I can actually just say, let's close that. Nope, don't save it. Don't need that anymore. So now if I come into here, I can go on my desktop. I can see I have my, did I save it to my desktop?
You saved it to your documents, Ryan.
Sorry, thank you. I was like, I must have missed a step here. Okay. So we see we can double click and open it. It opens up in Outlook like we expect. I can also edit this guy. And we can see the nice super long, super ugly format for our event. So all we need to do is we can say, okay, Control A, Control C. Cool. Now, if we come back to our flow here, I can say, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and paste this guy in there. Because that's what I want. That's the contents of the attachment I want to send out. Now, we can see it's really long, really ugly, makes our flow a little hard to work with. So we're good there. Let's go ahead and save this. Saving. There we go. Okay, now we notice we kind of get a problem here. We get a message that says the template validation failed. The template action send an email, so it tells us which action's got a problem, is not valid. The template language expression limit exceeded. Maximum 8,192 and actual 39,608. What that means is my expression for send an email is too long. They have a limit on how long it can be for that particular action. So I'm kind of in a pickle here. Luckily, there's a little trick that we figured out that allows you to be able to do this. So to kind of bypass this limitation, all we have to do is create a variable. So if I come in here and I want to say I want to initialize a variable, cool. Okay, there it goes. We'll give a variable name. We'll call it ICS content. And this is just going to be a string. Now, instead of putting that really long, really ugly content into the send an email, I can just paste it here. And I can come back up to the top here and just collapse this. So that way we make it nice and easy. Make it a little easier to work with. So now if we re-expand or apply to each, we can see, okay, well, this guy we know doesn't work. So if we delete that, I can click into here. And now on the side, we have options. So we have one for variables now, since I created a variable. Yet again, if I click See More, we have our variable name, and I can select ICS content. And now if I hit save, everything's saved. It's all good. Okay, so there are some ways if you get stuck by limit sizes, there are some things you can do to kind of bypass that, this is one of those tricks I figured out that makes it really easy to be able to attach file contents without actually having to directly include it as part of the send an email action. All right, now one of the things we can do as well is, before we get too far with running this through its full paces, is I want to receive a notification in my Teams channel when somebody responds and when they registered for our event. So that way we can kind of say, hey, let's talk about this in the team. Hey, we got people coming. So to do that, Microsoft has added an action that allows us to work with Teams. So if I type Teams, we'll just filter this so we can make it nice and easy. I can say I want to post a message. So now, yet again, it wants the ID of the team, which for the most part, I can also just select. So this one, I'm going to go with Emerald City Department of Transportation, the channel. I want general, body of the message. Now, this is where I start composing what gets posted to the team channel. So I can say, congratulations, another person has registered for the webinar. Details. So now I can say, you know what? I want to start putting this information there. So I'm going to put in there, I'm going to put their first name, and then I'm going to put features. Just due to sensitivity concerns about privacy data, I'm not going to include the email address per se into my Teams channel, even though you could if you really wanted to. And then we're good to go. So now if I save this guy, let's put this whole thing through its paces. So if we come back to our form, I can see I can submit another response. But we can also see, since I left this as being accessible to only my organization, and I left it checked that I can get their name, this is what they will see. Okay, they'll see their name and email address, which I'm okay with, since it's just me. So if I fill this out, we'll just put it a little longer so we know the difference here. All right, so we'll select our features. We'll just select one this time. We'll go with groups, and we'll hit submit. Okay, that'll go through its paces. If we come to our flow, notification pop up here. Should hit a few alerts here in a minute. If I come back here, I didn't change anything, so we're good. We can see, okay, we have one that ran 18 seconds ago. And if I click on this guy, I can see, okay, everything's checked, everything's green. Plus also, if you ever need to come back in the future and see what was sent into your flow, we do have the option you can click on here, like for the get response details, and here's all the output. So we have, okay, here's the who responded to it, because it's an internal form. I have the email address, I have the name, and then their favorite features. So it makes it really nice if you need to try and troubleshoot it. And the cool part is you can come in and edit the flow, and then come back and resubmit this particular flow to run again, which allows you to be able to say, okay, makes it really good for troubleshooting and testing scenarios without having to have somebody, oh, I need you to go register again to be able to fire this off. We can take advantage of that. Now, if we want to go take a look here, I now have, we'll open this up, make it nice and big, our information. So this is the email that got sent out because we told it to as part of the flow. So we can see we have their information, their email address. We have the ICS file, which if I double click this, say, yep, I want to open this. There we go. Okay, we have all information. All the user has to do is click save, and this now will show up on their calendar with all the information that we gave to them. All right, so at this point in time, oh, that's right, we need to check one last feature, and it looks like I accidentally closed Teams when I was cleaning things up. Okay, so we can see for our Emerald City Department of Transportation, we can see today I have a new registration. Okay, it says, congratulations, we've got this person that's responded. Cool. Now, the one thing that's kind of interesting here is that you'll notice all of them come in as me, which could be what you want, could not, may not be. So there are some ways that we can change this up so it's not coming from me, but it's what we've got. So there are ways you can add in connectors through Teams, which allow you to have this come in kind of more as a bot scenario, so you can give the bot an icon and a name instead of just a person. All right, at this point in time, open to questions. If anything came in.
Sure, Ryan. Yeah, thank you for a great presentation, by the way. And yes, now we'll start the questions and answers part. And should you wish to ask a question, simply type it into the questions window. Okay, Ryan, first question for you. Is it possible to change the user that the flow runs as?
That is a good question. By default, the flow will always run under the connection of the person that's creating it. Now, there are ways, we can switch back to our flow real quick, that we can change that, and that's done through what Flow calls connections. So for example, if I want to connect to SharePoint with a different account, if we click on the dot, dot, dot menu here, we can see we have some different connections. So I can add in a new connection and sign in with a different account, for example. Or say if you want these to run with a service account, so it's not running with a user, for example. That would be a way to kind of change it up.
Okay. Question 2, what are the best practices for running flows in an enterprise?
That one's a very good question I get a lot, is that in an organization, it's not generally a good idea to be having like business critical processes in a user's context. So for example, like we said, if we're running this, these flows will run in my account, which is okay, except if something happens to my account. So say, for example, I go on leave, my account gets disabled. In that instance, the flows stop running. Or if I decide to leave the company, same problem. So the best practice is when you're running these, you want to run as an organization, create the flows and run them as a service account instead of just a regular user. So that way, the service accounts aren't going to get deactivated and killed and have problems with that as likely as regular people are. So in that scenario, run it that way. Plus also make sure that you've always got somebody that is set up on the flow to be an alternate. So as an additional owner on the flow to be able to control that. Because without it, like I said, we run into that same problem that nobody else, even though they leave and they can't come in. So if you go into the form details, like where we had our run history, we do also have a section on the side here where you can add in an alternate owner. So if you're not in an organization where you can add in a service account very simply, you could always just add in a separate owner, and that way they can come in and take over the flow if need to, if you need to handle that scenario.
Okay. I'm not sure if this is a question or a statement of shock. Can we have one Power App form for desktop and mobile?
Power App, yes. So Power App form for desktop and mobile. The one thing you can do with Power Apps is they have the mobile view, which you can consume on a desktop. As you can see here, this is the mobile size view. There is also a tablet view that you can set up. At this point in time, if I remember correctly, there is not a way of crossing the functionality. So if you have your Power App is designed for mobile, it's going to be for mobile. You can't have a mobile screen inside of what they call a tablet Power App. But there are ways that you can create two different apps that handle the different form factors. It would be nice if Microsoft allowed us to say, oh, okay, we want to adjust, but at this point in time, we don't. So the nice part is, though, if you do a tablet layout, as they call it, on a mobile device, it still also sizes down and people can interact with it still. So if you want the larger form factor, I would say your best bet is to go with a tablet view, and then people can still interact with it with both.
Okay. How easy is it to connect forms, flow, and Power Apps to external data sources, such as SQL databases?
That is a good question. One of the things they've got is Microsoft has their I think they keep changing the name on. I think the current iteration is the Azure Data Gateway, which allows you to be able to connect to on-prem data sources, or there is an action. We go into our flow here. There are actions built in. So, for example, if you have Azure SQL or a readily available connection, you can connect to the different SQL data sources, whether it's MySQL, PostgreSQL, all those sort of things. Now, the trick comes in, like I said, if you want to run and access on-prem data, you can use the data gateway to be able to take advantage of that. But the data gateway does require a premium license because they call it a premium action. So licensing gets a little more tricky with your organization if you have to go that route.
Okay. Next question is, can you connect to Gravity Forms?
Can you say that again?
Can you connect to Gravity Forms? I think they're on about WordPress. There's a Gravity Form plugin.
Okay, let's see. No, I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing one currently. Now, you could use through some different, you can use your own custom connectors if they have a web API of some kind to be able to do that. But yet again, anytime you're using custom connectors now, that now becomes a premium action. So you just have to be more conscious about the licensing. But it is, they don't have a default action for it, but you can use your own connectors to do so.
Okay. Could you show us how to format the choice options from the JSON style?
That we can do. So let's go ahead and cancel this guy. So what we want to do is before we add it to SharePoint even, we can come in and we can add an action, except for I'm actually going to do this a little higher here. I'm going to create another variable. Okay, we'll call this guy features. Oops. String, we're just going to leave the value blank. Then we come inside our apply to each. After we get our responses, we can now add an action. And I'm going to search for variables. So if we can see down here, we have an option to set a variable. And the variable, oops, there we go. Variable I want is features. And then the value, we can do some different things with. So right now, we can say our favorite feature. And we have some different things we can run with that. So I can say in our expression, we can do some different JSON processing, do some conversions. What I'm looking for is, I want my string. Nope. Let's do replace. Okay, so for example, we know that, okay, we're going to replace our favorite feature. Okay. Then I'm going to take, and I want to replace, in this case, oops, not that, the open curly brace with an empty string, for example. And now it'll take a few more of these. Now there may be some other expressions that may work, but for the most part, what I found is just easy. It's just basic string manipulation at this point in time. So now if we say okay, oops, that's my expression. Okay, you want single quotes. All right. And I'll put that in. All right. All right. Anyway, this it'd be roughly that. I'd have to fill it out with the syntax. It's been a while since I've had to do that particular scenario, but it would just be the process. You come in, set the variable, replace it, replace the content, massage what you need to with the data, and then instead of adding in our response, we can now say, okay, instead of favorite feature, we can just add in our features variable.
Sure.
And then you change out also into our other places where we've used it.
Okay. Next question. In Flow, you can ask for approvals. What about timeouts if no approval or rejection is given?
That is a good question. Well, because I know we can do, as they mentioned, if we come in, we have an action that we can use that is approval. Okay, we can pick which type we want. We just want somebody to approve it. Now, if I remember correctly, yeah, the problem we get is in this scenario, there's no way to run with that. So I'm not exactly dealt with that scenario yet. The nice part in this scenario, I would say, if nobody's responded to it, then what you could do is on here we can assign it to more than one person, and then you could do a parallel. So if we add in a parallel branch, so while it sends out to the approval, I could also do a delay. And then I can do, okay, once it delays, go out and check to see if it's not been responded. If they haven't responded to it, I'll say, okay, let's send this out to somebody else to carry it on. So that would probably be the approach I would take. And then, unless if we didn't have the right person, I'll be assigned to and say, none of the people are available and we want to escalate to a manager, for example. Which is also one of the cool things that we get with Flow is we have the ability to very easily figure out who somebody's manager is.
Cool. Okay, next question. What happens when a service account running Flow reaches the run limit per month? If it's a free version, do we need more than one service account for Flow as a best practice?
The trick with that one is all depends on which type of account. So they mentioned the free version. That one, you'd have the free version that you get, you run with an account. There's not really a way of doing a service account unless you sign up an email address. If you're talking as part of an Office 365 tenant, you get, if I remember correctly, 2,500 runs of flows per month per user. And those are all pooled. So that way, if you have one user in an organization, you get 2,500 runs. If you have 10, you get 25,000 runs. And it doesn't matter who in your organization is running them, so there's not going to be a limit of saying, okay, well, the service account had it hit 2,501, it's not going to matter. The only time is just the total organization amount. So if you're with a larger organization where you have a few thousand people, you're going to have a much higher number than that. If you really realize on a regular basis you need more runs than those limits get you, there is a way that you can actually pay, I forget exactly what it is, but to get more executions per month.
Okay, great. And last question, Ryan, I know we're kind of up against the clock. If we create a flow in one list, can this be used in a different list in a different site?
Yes, to do that, the flow itself would stay, but if we come back, no, I don't want to change, save that. What we can do is we have on your same flow response where we have the owners, all those sort of things, if you click on more, you actually have the option to save as, and then that'll allow you to be able to come in, save it, and then you can change out the connection to work to a different list now, for example. You also have the ability, this is kind of one of those things Microsoft recently released, and you can see it's still marked here as preview, is to send a copy. So if you want to create a flow kind of as a template inside your organization and send it off to a coworker, for example, to be able to create flows out of.
Super. That's really cool. Ryan, thank you so much for your time today. Very much appreciate you taking the time, getting up early to give us this great webinar. Really appreciate it.
That was good to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so thank you, Ryan. Okay, everybody, that's nearly it for today. Just a few things to wrap up here. Just bear with me here for one moment. Okay, so please see sharepointeurope.com/register for webinars for further details on all upcoming webinars, or visit our resource center for previous webinars. Thank you all for joining today, and especially a big thank you to Ryan Scouten, who presented our webinar today. Very much appreciated getting up early. Thank you all and have a great day. Take care and goodbye.